Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Silver the Hedgehog here, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Sonic X Shadow Generations, while we're still playing through Sonic Generations as a remastered version of the game for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, PC Steam, and finally the Nintendo Switch. And technically the Nintendo Switch successor, if that's gonna be the case, for its backwards compatibility system. So anyway, last time we've essentially did manage to experience certain challenge acts for specifically in Speed Highway within Act 1 as well as Act 2, as well as now we also did manage to went into City Escape challenge acts in Act 1. So overall, everything else checks out there. So today for this video is that we're going to be continuing experiencing the Dreamcast era in terms of the forms of these challenge acts, and so much so, we're about to be able to wrap things up every single challenge acts during the forms within City Escape, but this time in Act 2. So either way, I believe the track choice we're most able to go in and select is, actually I might not worry about that right now, just to ensure for the fact that we're trying to able to actually show off one of the music tracks that was not present in the original version. So much so for the fact that, as you can tell, we're about to be going through those abundance of dash rings. So that's to be expected, especially concerning for the fact that we can able to actually go through insane amounts of these dash rings, and then you have to get them all before you end off the entire challenge. So I digress. So yeah, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, there is the 9th of January today, in some cases in 2025 today. So it looks like, no matter what though, we've only got about 1 week left until Donkey Kong Country Returns HD was expected to be releasing for the Nintendo Switch. I'm not exactly sure what the review scores is actually going to turn out to be, but I'm sure enough that we'll find out more about it, probably at some point until next week, if we decide able to actually do some additional content for the sake of the forms of Sonic Generations, remastered versions, such as, for instance, if we somehow managed able to get into the forms of near towards the end game, then we're most able to save the end game for later, and so much so we can able to actually just try to focus on trying to find the majority of the Chow, and on top of all that stuff though, trying to find every single red star rings and all that stuff, just for the sake of completionist and all that stuff, because that's essentially how I roll. So, anyways, so as you can tell that we somehow unlocked the next music, and so much so, let's get into the next challenge act right here, and so much so, Cream the Rapid is gonna help us by trying to go for the entire mini segment of the entire Act 2 in City Escape, except if you couldn't tell, we immediately start things off with only 1 ring. However though, not only Cream though, but also with any other Chows for that matter, specifically 5 of them to be more specifically, they do seem to able to actually hold up 1 ring, so just in case that if you get hit at one form or another, either by the forms of those enemies, or specific hazards ranging from bombs, injuring the forms within the snowboarding segment, injuring the forms within the San Francisco bit, and as a result though is about the fact that you can able to press the corresponding button to able to actually call one of the Chows, or anything else for that matter, to able to actually bring 1 ring to you. So, however though, I'm probably not going to do that for the sake of this run, just because no matter what though, if you refuse to do these at all, you're able to actually get yourselves minus time bonus, and as a result though, that honestly might as well help me for the majority of the, trying to get ourselves with the falsely S rank requirement. So, but honestly though, this challenge is not too bad. It's just about the fact you have to watch out for a lot of hazards involved, ranging from these gun robots, alongside with the forms of some spiky stuff and bombs essentially. So yeah, you felt right at home when it comes to likely trying to complete this challenge, despite the fact I'm pretty much run out of my boost, but that's okay because, well, the end of the level is just right here. So, and luckily I didn't use a single Chow, so this means about the fact that we somehow got ourselves a lot of negative time bonus. So yeah, that's actually pretty swell. So that pretty much does it for this challenge. So not too shabby, like I said before, especially concerning for the fact that I pretty much know this game a lot. So anyway, let's get into the forms of the next challenge, which appears to be Topsy-Turvy. And as you can tell, I'm going to be selecting a different different music this time. And as a result though, take a listen to the forms of the background music you're going to be hearing in the background. Do you recognize that music? Well, it's obviously the music track from Shadow the Hedgehog, which as a result, technically speaking now, is about the fact that in the original version of Sonic Generations, there's only one musical track you can able to select in the original version of Sonic Generations based off from Shadow the Hedgehog. That's what appears to be I Am All of Me, which appears to be the main theme of the entire song of Shadow the Hedgehog, the 2005 game. Well, it turns out in the forms of in a 2024 remastered version of Sonic Generations now, about the fact that we can now able to actually listen to two different music tracks in Sonic Generations remastered version somehow. And generally speaking, I was about the fact that aside from the fact that you can still able to actually try to unlock I Am All of Me, main theme, but also we're able to get ourselves an additional music for the likes of Shadow the Hedgehog 2005 game, and as a result we can now hear Wostopolis. So yeah, because basically though in Wostopolis though, that's basically is the very first level you're able to get into in Shadow the Hedgehog 2005. So much so for the fact that because no wonder why that we have to go into Wostopolis 10 times not able to see the true ending of the game, mind you, which is insane. And however though, one of those musical tracks in particular has been replaced, and one of those tracks in particular, as I established that before, ever since technically in yesterday, at least if I can recall correctly, that music track was obviously based off from Sonic Rush. That it was actually by the forms of the music track that was actually from Leaf Storm, and as a result that level was actually in questioning was, well, kind of think about it though, the actual music name for it is actually called Right There, Right On. So yeah, that's as far as I was trying to explain to you about this. So anyway, so here we go on to the next challenge right here, and basically though, we're actually going back into high-speed hijinks once again, ever since in Sky Century level. However though, the biggest difference is this time is that it obviously takes place in City Escape, basically. So anyways though, and also we somehow choose the background music for this mission, and that's what appears to be Green Forest from Sonic Adventure 2. For the likes of the third Sonic stage. So yeah, it's a shame about the fact that Shadow doesn't get nearly as much stages back in 2001, just to ensure for the fact that we can able to actually know for the fact that how the story actually decides to able to compromise with. Well, mind you, it's been a very long while actually since I actually have last played Sonic Adventure 2, either on the original Dreamcast version, despite the stupid resetting problem that I keep on always having luck with, and in addition to that, with the GameCube port with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and even especially noticeable with the Xbox 360/PlayStation 3 downloadable version of Sonic Adventure 2, or Sonic Adventure 2 Battle to be more specifically if you try to prefer playing multiplayer and stuff like that in Adventure 2 Battle. So I digress. Alright, so now we're done with that. Now let's go ahead and tackle through the next doppelganger race. And straight to the point, I'm pretty sure we're now on to the halfway point in terms of these doppelganger races for this point right now. And so much so for the fact that obviously that was about the fact I think this is now, technically it's the 10th kind of doppelganger race we can able to actually dive into, because, well, kind of thinking about it though is about the fact that, yeah, it starts to get a little bit more samey after a while, but regardless of everything else though, I just want to get that particular trophy at the end of the day when it comes to the PS4 version / PlayStation 5 version, so it really doesn't matter what system you're able to actually play it on. So but anyway though, let's talk about the forms of another topics I would like to point things out. And out of nowhere, ever since around a couple of days ago, that it seems to be more specifically, we're about to be getting a next batch of microSD cards for the Nintendo Switch, or to be more specifically than that, by Samsung when it comes to microSD cards. And this time what appears to be a Sonic the Hedgehog theme microSD cards. So basically though, they brings us 4 of them, which does correspond with the forms of 4 different Sonic characters, ranging from Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Shadow. So no Amy apparently though. I'm guessing is about the fact that they're trying to able to replicate the actual character's appearance from the likes of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie, well, despite the fact that I'm probably not going to spoil things too much, but hey. So, in terms of the forms of the microSD cards they did somehow brings us into, for the Sonic the Hedgehog theme of that particular microSD cards as far as I'm aware, those are, let's just say, one of them does contain 128 gigabytes and 256 gigabytes, and 512 gigabytes, and finally 1 terabyte. And as far as I'm aware, Sonic does manage to have the 512 gigabytes, and Knuckles did somehow got 128 gigabytes, and as far as Tails, as far as I'm concerned, they does manage to able to have it on 256 gigabytes. And the biggest one out of them all, though, is of course 1 terabyte. And can you guess whose character did manage to able to show up on 1 terabyte microSD card? Well, as you may have guessed, Shadow the Hedgehog, in some cases the ultimate life form. So, you pretty much get the idea about that. And so far anyway, in terms of the actual price tag of these microSD cards, as I explained about this earlier, that it seems so far that Knuckles is actually going to be quite cheaper at this point. Usually I'm more referring to as the dollars at the moment, which as a result it did say $23.99. And meanwhile for Tails, that it's actually cost about $36.99 as well. And meanwhile for Sonic though, it's actually going to cost about $68 / well, you get the idea for that point. So, and finally though, the most expensive one out of them all though, is Shadow's 1 terabyte microSD card, and it's going to cost you about $125.99. So, yeah, it's quite expensive, especially concerning for the fact you have a lot of memory, if you do manage to able to acquire 1 terabyte of that microSD card. So, yeah, that's always something. So, anyways though, so now we've basically done every single challenges for the sake of City Escape, and now we can able to hop into Seaside Hill challenge acts now. So the first one out of the bunch though is we're going to be going into this underwater labyrinth, and as a result we need to get out of here before we drown. So as a result though, the music track I did somehow choose for this mission, and it makes it a little bit more of a perfect fit, concerning for the fact that it reminds me of so much of exploring through not only Labyrinth Zone from Sonic 1, but as well as the forms of Hydro City Zone from the likes of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, or nowadays with Sonic Mania. But even then though, that particular topic can't wait, in terms of if we decide able to do our redo Let's Play of Sonic Mania, just before we dive into the next 2D Sonic game at some point, which appears to be, of course, Sonic Superstars, but usually, relatively speaking, I was about the fact I do need some bit of practice in regards to the forms of momentum, and on top of all that stuff though, just anything else, especially in Sonic Superstars case, because, well, when it comes to trying to get trophies or achievements, essentially, it can take a very long time to able to achieve those things. So, but anyways though, oh jeez, okay. Totally forgot about the fact that that particular little column platform decides able to extend up and down at one point, but luckily though we did somehow pass for that point. So, but anywho, also, I don't suppose if you noticed about the fact that I don't think it's definitely going to be possible for the fact that with Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, it's most likely and unlikely it's probably not going to come to DVD after all, because, well, generally speaking, I was about the fact that my guess is about the fact that it's going to be stuck on the streaming services at one point, just like the forms of how it does it for Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nuggets, which is kind of unfortunate to me though, especially concerning for the fact I still managed to really enjoy both of those films while looking back on it though, despite the fact that in the second Chicken Run film, which is of course Dawn of the Nuggets, does have some sheer amount of issues, ranging from its controversial opinion about the forms of the voice actors being replaced, and on top of all that stuff though, the story is basically just a rehash of the forms of the first film, but in reverse this time. And in addition to that though, it kind of reminds me like a similar trope as the forms of The Little Mermaid 2, Return to the Sea, for what I've noticed. Well, usually relatively speaking, I was just about the fact that it's been a very long time for me though, since I actually have last watched The Little Mermaid 2, The Return to the Sea. Well, that's just mainly because I feel like that film to me died while looking back after 25 years ago almost, since when the actual film first came out. It just feels a bit underwhelming to me. That's just mainly because no matter what though, it's just one of those moments where the story could work if the fact that sometimes though, Melody as a character can be felt a bit temperamental at times. So, that's just me. Although the only thing I will give it credit for is that obviously though, Melody does have a familiar voice actor that was before when she was voiced not only Twilight Sparkle from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, but alongside with that, she also did the voice of Bubbles from the likes of the original Powerpuff Girls series. So, among all others as well, which I could probably think about on top of my head, like, for instance, Ben 10, if I could recall correctly, and anything else that you could possibly imagine. So, anyway, there's also another thing else that's worth noting for. Speaking of which, in terms of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie, again, no spoilers for the time being, and so much so, out of nowhere, that Sonic 3 was expected to be releasing on digital platforms until the 21st of January. So, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that long left until you can able to actually download that particular film on digital platforms. So yeah, that was very unexpected. Especially, I've almost assuming for the fact that they're trying to wait for that until when it's decides able to release on digital format on February for some time. But apparently though, they decided able to release the film until way more earlier than it should. Kind of thing about it though is about the fact I believe that particular digital platform version of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie, in terms of that particular film's download, that it is going to be releasing until roughly about a month after the actual theatrical release since the 20th of December, which is pretty bizarre to me though. But I couldn't complain, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though that film is awesome still, especially despite the fact that it's been overshadowed by the films in terms of the box office department that, Mufasa the Lion King just keeps on like taunting everyone, and I'm sorry, I just really cannot stress this enough about the fact that how much disappointed I was when it comes to what if I managed able to see that, you know, another pointless live-action adaptation of something relates to that, because again, I'm just so sick and tired of that particular stuff, man. So anyways though, also what I've noticed is about the fact that they did somehow manage able to reveal one of those cut deleted scenes of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie. What I've noticed, again, no spoilers, well, I'm probably gonna mention about this anyway in case of bonus features will come into play during at some point on DVD / Blu-ray / 4K UHD Blu-ray release. So much so for the fact that I believe the deleted scene does manage to bring us into something Mexico related, which that's as far as I can try to describe about it for right now. Although I will say is about the fact that since that obviously though both Sega and Paramount are already prepared for the 4th Sonic movie, which again, no spoilers, I promise you for the sake of time folks, but anyway, Jim Carrey is going to be open to Sonic 4, and he has decided to power rest instead of retire. So now it's like, okay, that's actually kind of a good thing, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though in the 3rd Sonic movie, after all, he steals the show, and as a result though, it does manage to deliver. So anyway, there's also another thing else that's worth noting for actually, is about the fact that I can assure to you that it may look like about the fact that this year, when it comes to 2025, is also going to celebrate one of the Sega's franchises for that particular celebration in mind. That's what it appears to be, Jet Set Radio, which as a result though, yeah, ever since when I believe the original game on the Dreamcast version, to be more specifically, did manage to came out in a millennium year in 2000, mind you, and so much so that this year will mark the 25th anniversary of the existence of Jet Set Radio. So I'm very curious to know of what they're going to bring us into. Well, I would say for the fact that they're trying to save that particular part worth noting for until when the next Nintendo system is going to be on its way, if possible. So anyway, Also, another thing else I'd like to mention about is that, well, I actually did manage to able to done some of my researches about the forms of one of those Disneyland, Magic Kingdom's attractions history, that some people seem to say that one of those attractions in particular, which appears to be called let's just say Stitch's Great Escape, apparently most people really hate that particular attraction for some reason, which it's hard for me to explain, but I do know for certain for one thing in mind. It's like a kid-friendly version of the forms of the previously existed attractions, which appears to be, let's just say, Alien Encounter, where basically though, I believe, from what I've heard anyway, in the past anyway, that basically though, Alien Encounter was obviously kind of feels a bit intimidating back in a very long time ago, and generally speaking it was about the fact that, well, it does manage to take place in Tomorrowland or anything else like that, so again, I might be wrong, but either way, and so much so for the fact that during the forms of some time, and I would say in 2003 or something like that, or 2004, basically though, there was this new attraction called Stitch's Great Escape, where basically though it's about the fact that you can able to actually sit down and relax for a bit, and as a result though, you can able to watch this kind of an interesting, impressive animatronics of Stitch in action, and there are some questionable issues with that particular ride in mind, and that's what most people seem to found this to be a huge criticism when it comes to that particular attraction. Like, first of all, there's this particular system where basically though there's a lot of gross humor, which as a result though, stuff like spitting at guests and a chili dog effect, which I was like, this is very unusual for what I've heard, and so much so when the actual the light goes into pure darkness, I've noticed there's a lot of children screaming, which as a result, that might actually feels like a terrifying effect, especially concerning for the fact that, well, I could imagine about the fact that if, for what I can gather, if Piglet or Sonic or anybody else for that matter were able to actually experience that particular attraction back then, oh my lord, I can imagine if Piglet will be absolutely terrified by that. And luckily, though, Rarity is with Piglet after all, so thankfully, though, Rarity did manage to cheer him up after hearing a lot of flashbacks of this horrible PTSD of experiencing the most terrifying attraction of all time when it comes to Disney Magic Kingdom or anything else like that. So, that's as far as I was expecting. But, generally speaking, I was about the fact that the actual ride has been, well, primarily closed ever since during the bombs have been a lockdown year, which is of course in 2020, but to be more accurate though, that particular attraction has been closed during the bombs have been 16th of July in 2020, so yeah, I will have to admit it though right away, good riddance for that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like Stitch as a character, but it's just that with that particular attraction itself, my goodness, I've heard a lot of controversial opinions out there, especially concerning for the fact that luckily for me, that I've never actually experienced that in my whole entire life, because if I somehow experienced that, my goodness, that would be so embarrassing. So, but anyway, so that pretty much does it for Act 1, selections of those challenge acts for the likes of Seaside Hill. Now let's move on to Act 2, and as you can tell, the music track we're going to be choosing this time, and that's what appears to be the main theme, Sonic Heroes. Because, get it, because, you know, Seaside Hill did originally exist in Sonic Heroes, so it makes sense for that regard. So, even though it's a shame about the fact that there is no sign of the forms of a reimagining version of Grand Metropolis or Casino Park, and as well as the forms of Mystic Castle or Hang Castle for that matter, or Mystic Mansion. Oh yeah, that's what the actual level itself is called. I keep thinking about the opposite for some reason, because mind you, it has been about quite a few hours ago since I actually have last played this game for sure, because for those of you who don't know, I guess it's about a few of you at this point, that the weather condition so far today is pretty cold, and it's also worth noting for, we actually got snow, which as a result though, yeah, it's probably best if we not go out for the time being, and on top of all that stuff though, I was expecting to try to able to order, the last few PlayStation 2 games or something like that, to able to actually complete our entire PlayStation 2 game collection at some point. But chances are, though, is about the fact that I might have to wait on that for a while, just to ensure for the fact that, for one, I need to think of something of one of those PlayStation 2 games I would like to consider getting for its specific franchises I do enjoy, and maybe trying to give some another franchises a shot. And two, we'll have to wait until when the snow goes away, just in case of slippery roads will come into play if the actual snow doesn't seem to able to go away and stuff. Well, kind of thinking about it though, I do like the cozy vibes, so, but it's just about the fact that sometimes though, that I just prefer, like, you know, summer overall, in comparison to the forms of other, like, seasons, but that's just me, so... But anyway, so let's go ahead and move on to the next challenge here, and so much so, we're going to be going on to the forms of... Kind of thinking about it, though, is probably the most, you know, intense missions I've ever experienced in this game so far, and that's what appears to be Terror from the Sea, where basically, though, we got to run on water, and as a result, though, there's a deadly threat, which, as a result, though, yeah, unlike in Sonic Colors, though, basically, though, we can't able to walk on underwater, though. Although, unlike classic Sonic, though, he can't do that. But I've no idea why modern Sonic refuses to able to actually get into the underwater. Well, I totally get it about the fact that there might be some dangerous threats in the world. To be more specifically, though, if you try to go out of your way, like, for instance, though, if we managed to able to get into, like, let's just say, this last bit coming up, basically, though, is about the fact that there's this giant mechanical fish that it decides to able to show up. Like, for instance, dang it. Oh, jeez. This mission can be quite tricky sometimes, because sometimes, though, boosting is always a key here, and I somehow died again, so... that was very unacceptable, but regardless of such, though, there we go. Now we somehow bypassed this point. And I believe we've almost nearly at the end, so much so for the fact that we have to go for a lot of spring to spring, and dang it, I was expecting to try to able to make it by that point, but chances are though, yeah, there's this very sinister little mechanical fish right there. Can you get into the goal ring? Thank you. Jeez, I can't believe I messed that up when it comes to gaining the S rank. Maybe I might as well try that again on my spare own time, but not now though, just because we got some more missions to take care of before we head over to the main boss of the Dreamcast era, so yeah. Oh, and speaking of which, in regards of the forms of the Sega Dreamcast in mind, one of those games in particular, which appears to be Sonic Shuffle, I can't even believe by saying this, is about the fact that once we make our way towards the end of 2025, that will mark the 25th anniversary of the game's release of Sonic Shuffle, or in some cases Sonic Party, because get it, because, you know, Sonic Shuffle is basically a Mario Party ripoff. Well, instead of trying to utilize with dice blocks, unlike Mario Party, so instead you're able to utilize with cards, that you can able to actually shuffle those cards out if you manage to run out of them, and so much so that is when the UMV decides to come into play. As a result, though, you can able to actually see what cards did you have onto your LCD screen. So yeah, that's actually kind of interesting, but ultimately, though, it's about the fact that it's very unfortunate about the fact that Sonic Shuffle has never gets re-released on any modern systems, but that's just mainly because I believe the negative reviews doesn't seem to help, and not to mention, though, I'm guessing the sale numbers doesn't seem to help either. So, and perhaps even most notably out of them all, though, is about the fact that, well, much like the original Mario Party, there's a lack of practice, so I guess that makes it pretty obvious for the sake of time right there. So, anyways, let's move on to the next character mission, and it looks like Rouge the Bat is going to help us by able to taking care of those egg pawns with shields, because, yeah, if you try to homing attack into any of those egg pawns with shields, well, it doesn't do anything if you homing attack it simply. So instead, you have to press the corresponding button to able to actually make Rouge decide to able to blow kisses right at the forms of those egg pawns to able to get distracted. And then every once in a while though, as soon as you're able to get rid of those egg pawns, then you can able to progress. Thanks to the forms of one of those platforms, you can able to actually decide able to make it activated. So, yeah, not much else you can say about this mission in particular. It's just, well, you go from point A to point B. Though I still love the fact that we're able to traverse into the entire stage in nighttime of all things. Now, if you're probably wondering, how come we actually got ourselves that particular time marker if we managed able to go for the checkpoint, by the way? Well, for those of you who don't know, this is actually technically my third attempt for this recording session in this mission in particular. That's to be more specifically than that. But that's just mainly because, for the love of God, I swear I was gonna able to try to aim for those Eggman's egg pawns, but so much so, the actual angle feels a bit off to me. Well, that might be the only time that I will try to able to accept that. But aside from all that stuff, though, once we move on to the next couple of missions, though, including some of my least favorite challenges coming up, obviously, though, is about the fact that, well, I don't have to worry about trying to able to do a lot of editing stuff to do, while there's actually a time, best time performance marker will show up. So, anyways, though, let's go ahead and finish off this mission here, and, well, we can now able to tackle through the doppelganger race for presumably speaking of, this is going to be the 12th race that we can able to actually decide able to deal with, in terms of the doppelganger race, as a matter of fact. So, anyways though, there's also another thing else I would like to mention about, is that yes indeed, I finally managed able to get back into Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 3DS recently, and I'm almost getting close to getting myself my full 100% completion of that game. And recently though, I finally managed able to accomplish 2 missions so far that I was originally decided able to tackle through back then, but because I have to wait until when the entire DLC was a thing, for what I've heard anyway, thanks to Knuckles did somehow told me this, and so much so for the fact that recently though, I've managed able to actually unlock yet another one of those Smash Run powers for trying to able to go ahead and do Endless Smash mode by able to actually KO 200 of those me fighting team people. And in addition to that, I finally managed able to accomplish the hardest difficulty in Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 3DS by go ahead and trying to able to, you know, participating in difficulty in 9.0, and as a result, that's quite a bit of a challenge to me though. Although luckily though, I don't have to utilize with the forms of losing a single life for that particular part. Although potentially I somehow only lose about a couple of lives during the forms of this whole entire process, because thankfully though, if you manage to get into classic mode, although it's a shame we can't able to increase the amount of lives you want to start things up with, like 1 to 5 or anything else like that. So instead, you start the thing off, you able to actually just, you know, get yourselves 2 stocks as opposed to 1, unlike in Smash Ultimate. So that's something, I suppose. So anyways though, and to top of all that stuff though, I somehow managed to use Cloud, and as a result, I did indeed manage to use a custom character for Cloud, just to ensure we can able to increase the defense, and especially noticeable with the attack power as well. And so much so, I was originally trying to able to do this as in Sonic or Bayonetta and Ganondorf, and let me tell you, it didn't go too well, mainly because as far as I'm aware, with Ganondorf in mind, he's actually very slow in terms of movement, but he's incredibly powerful regardless of the forms of the movement. And meanwhile for Sonic though, I just got thrashed by the forms of the giant Mr. Game & Watch in this very cramped stage, which is Flat Zone 2, and when it comes to Bayonetta though, my goodness, the hit detection when it comes to fisticuffs just somehow feels a bit wonky at times to me. Well, mind you though, it's been a very long time that we somehow managed to play Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS, alongside with the Wii U version as well, which, trust me, what I'm saying is, if we get onto Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U on my spare own time, and maybe potentially for a future Let's Play or something, I'm not exactly 100% sure, but regardless of such, though, is about the fact that, well, wish me luck. In terms of completing those godforsaken difficult challenges coming up. So, but even then, though, I haven't got that far into it, though, I must admit, though, right away, just because I need to save up a lot of golden cash, which, as a result, though, is a lot of emphasis on grind heavy, so... Anyways, though, so now we've basically done with any other challenge acts in terms of the forms of Seaside Hill, and now we can able to participate in for the actual main boss in the Dreamcast era. So let's insert those three keys in, and so much so, if we hear the background music, well, I'm sure that music sounds familiar to you, which I'm pretty sure that's more accurately Perfect Chaos theme from Sonic Adventure. So let's go ahead and check this out. And it's even more convenient, though, is about the fact that unlike in you know, the original Sonic Adventure, where Sonic can able to actually turn into Super Sonic in order able to do with Perfect Chaos, well, in Sonic Generations this time, we don't need to worry about using Chaos Emeralds and turn into Super form, because now we've actually become Modern Sonic, and this means we can now able to do some bit of boosting above the water, or just essentially run on water while doing boosting. So, anyways, let's get to it with Perfect Chaos, and it's actually kind of a cool fitting to able to actually realize that we still managed able to get ourselves the Dreamcast model of Sonic with Sonic Adventure skin. It makes a little bit more of a perfect fit for able to actually try to, you know, take down Perfect Chaos in that particular fashion. So, anyway, so you get the idea. Basically, you have to save your boost as wisely as you can, and so much so we have to go for a lot of obstacles along the way. And relatively speaking, this boss is actually pretty cool to me, though, especially because I do remember that Sonic did tell me this, that back in 2011, he was incredibly hyped to see Perfect Chaos within a brand new HD visuals, and so much so for the fact that when it comes to the forms of this design of Perfect Chaos, it does look very accurate while looking back on during the forms of the original version of Sonic Generations. So anyway, another thing else I would like to point out is that, thank goodness, in terms of Amazon websites, they finally managed to get finally cancelled the 3DS pre-orders for Mighty No. 9, because let me tell you, good riddance as well, especially because, for I've heard anyway, that Mighty No. 9 is pretty awful, and so much so for the 3DS version is officially being cancelled, and so much so that the pre-orders for the 3DS version of that particular terrible game has finally been cancelled in Amazon. So yeah, I fully appreciate about that, because every time whenever I looked upon the forms of future or new releases for the game's catalog, that game just keeps on popping out of nowhere on the Amazon website, which I was like, wait a minute, that can't be right. Especially concerning for the fact that, well, I already know for the fact that the 3DS is pretty popular for its time, but when it comes to some other games in particular got cancelled on the 3DS, like for instance, you know, Mighty No. 9 for instance, that obviously though is about the fact that that particular game is not going to give up for its delisting on several shopping websites. So, anyway though, there's also another thing else I would like to point out as well. It looks like we're about to be receiving some more Midnight Black Collections accessories for the PlayStation 5, and I think it's probably best if we save that particular topic until tomorrow, because for now, Perfect Chaos has been defeated, and so much so, the Dreamcast era has officially been concluded. For now.
You've brought back so much of the world! You're doing great, Sonic! You mean, you're doing great, Sonics. Right. I may never get used to that. Ah! Watch out! The Chaos Emerald's powers are miraculous, and we sure could use a miracle. We need that emerald! Sonic, your speed has been able to restore our friends. I bet it can restore the Chaos Emerald to full power, too! And I bet you double we're going to need all 7 emeralds.
You're on.
You guys have your work cut out for you.
An adventure's no fun if it's too easy.
And now we're going to be moving on to the third and the final era, which appears to be the modern era, which we've noticed one of those levels is actually from the likes of not only Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, and there's also one of those levels in Sonic Unleashed was there, and finally Sonic Colors. So, and relatively speaking, I was about the fact that in addition to that, we also managed to claim the 4th Chaos Emerald. So yeah, only 3 more to go for this point, folks. So, anyways, with that being said, folks, is that we get endings of this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic X Shadow Generations, while we're still playing through the remastered version of Sonic Generations. Is that we're about to get to it with the level from Sonic 06. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later, fellas.